Welcome to Burning River Radio, Baseball Edition. I'm your host, Joe Koblitz, and I'm here with my sidekick, Justin Lotta. He's a whole lot of love.
I've been upgraded
And
to sidekick, huh?
what's that?
I've been bumped up to sidekick.
What were you before?
I don't know. I think before I was just here with you. I wasn't anything. I was just here. So now I'm here with some other form of identification.
Co-host, sidekick, whatever you want. I just like to make it clear that you're on the show with me, because if you listen to the basketball one, they'll just start talking and you don't have any clue who it is. Which is fine, I guess. They're a bunch of nobodies. Who cares?
Who?
Anyway, so the NFL draft is coming up on Thursday here. It's a Tuesday. And the Indians have lost 2 games in a row. So obviously we're going to abandon the season. And since the Cavs aren't playing yet, we're going to abandon their season because they haven't started the second round yet. Or they're not still playing the first round. You know, they should have lengthened it out. I mean, 4 games, that's just lazy. You should play at least 6. So the Browns.
Number 1 overall pick. Get excited. Have a major
Is it?
impact.
That's how you always get excited about that. The Twins have the number 1 overall pick this year in baseball, and very exciting for them. I was rooting for the Reds.
Like Hunter Green, everyone should be fired. Everybody that's hired should be fired if they don't take Hunter Green.
I saw you tweeted something about him, but I'm too lazy to read other people's articles. So
you should really read that. It was something.
I probably should. I saw he's one of those double threats, which what's it? Shohei Ohtani?
Shohei Ohtani?
What's his name?
Yeah,
the Japanese guy.
Ohtani, yeah.
Okay, so he's essentially
Bumgarner.
Yeah, they call him a modern-day Babe Ruth. And, of course, Babe Ruth was a pitcher first and then switched to being a hitter because hitters are more important than pitchers, at least.
They were.
If you're the best hitter in the game and you're the best pitcher in the game at the same time, they prefer you play every day and hit.
I don't know. I think they're going to draft him as a pitcher.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So you would assume that if a guy is an incredible hitter and an incredible pitcher, he's probably going to be used as a hitter. Primarily. And now if he was good at both but better than one or the other, then you could see that. It's just kind of interesting to me. A real Michael Martinez type.
Lowest ERA in the team.
That's it?
Lowest ERA in the team.
How's his curveball, Michael Martinez?
You just cannot cut the guy with the lowest ERA in the team. It looks really bad. That's a bad decision.
We talked last week about improving even good teams. And one of the primary things I had talked about was replacing Tomlin, and I said the other one would be essentially to get a real center fielder. I mean, I guess if you replaced Martinez with like Eric Gonzalez, it might be a slight improvement, but I can't imagine it would have a huge effect on the team. But in general, the team is good. I mean, this is an all-star laden team. You got 5 pitchers who can let you win every single day, which is really what you want from your rotation as a whole. The offense should be scoring 5 to 6 runs a night. They haven't the last couple games. That's why they lost. But with those guys in there, Kipnis looks good now already. Back, Brantley hit a home run today. There's a lot of guys that are hitting pretty well right at the moment. Brandon Geyer is not one of them. But even Jan Gomes is getting kind of lucky.
Well, he's hurting other people while he gets lucky.
Have you ever seen like that? I'm trying to think. It was like a movie. It might have been an X-Files thing or something. Like whenever it was a guy, maybe a Twilight Zone, a guy when he could, like, if he wanted to, he'd go out and he got whatever he wanted to, whatever he wanted. It would just happen. Everything was so lucky for him. But to balance the universe out, something terrible had to happen to somebody else, and so he wouldn't do anything. Like he became a hermit and hid in his home or something like that. I could just be making this up. In which case, they should make a movie about it. But I feel like that's Jan Gomes. Either he stays at home and he hits 100 and can't get a hit, or he finally starts hitting and it's at the cost of like plays that should be called errors, infield hits, hitting it off the pitcher, or having Jose Altuve crash into a guy with a really ridiculous name, Teoscar.
Hey, Oscar.
Teoscar. I mean, come on. And hopefully they're all okay. It looked like Altuve took a clothesline pretty hard, and
Oscar left on a cart.
and
Should call him
Oscar was more seriously injured. But anyway, I think in all the offense should be okay. It's not all coming together at the exact same moment, but they did just face Dallas Keuchel, who is a top at least 6 pitcher in the league.
6? Are you talking about this year or overall?
Over past 5 years.
I don't know about top 6. I'd say top 20 for sure.
Oh, he's way better than that. He's up there with the elite pitchers in baseball.
He's had 2 good seasons. Well,
okay, so over the last 3 years, whatever, Either way, he's been good, and he's been really good this year as well.
Yes, he's better than he was in 2015.
Yeah, so to get knocked out by a lefty like that, yeah, I don't think you can get too mad about that. So
no, and they had some good at bats, and they had some opportunities. He just kept getting ground balls, which is what he does.
Well, that's what he does. Yeah. He's a ground ball pitcher. That's the whole point of him. Anyway, since we did a podcast last Wednesday, we're doing it on Tuesday again. We're eventually going to cycle back to doing them on Sundays. But there's not a whole lot going on in the Indians. They had Monday off. I thought we could cover the minor league stuff a little bit because you don't get that on STO or ESPN or anywhere else that might actually Indians at some point. It seems like nobody ever talks about this stuff. And sometimes when people get like, I'll talk about the guys I see all the time on Twitter, which are the guys in the right now extended spring training, eventually Arizona League, Instructional League, Arizona Fall League, whatever. But I'm talking about mostly younger guys that are between 17 and 20. And for the most part, people don't care. But I always wonder, when do you start caring? Like as a basic fan who just watches games on TV, because they never mention anyone's name on the TV broadcast. Like Tristan McKenzie's having an incredible season, and you never hear his name on there. You might hear about Zimmer. You probably hear about Clevenger, Merritt, guys that could come up in short order. But you never hear about anybody AA or below. Rare exception like Francisco Mejia's 50-game hitting streak.
It took 50 games for them to do that.
Yeah, and they ignore it. They ignore it completely before then. So you're just supposed to all of a sudden, oh, okay, I never heard of this guy, and then he hits AAA, and now he's a top prospect. Like, I feel like you should probably know him a little before then. Not necessarily that you should memorize every player who gets drafted and then follow every single player on as they go on with their career, but you should still kind of get to know them at the lower levels and have an idea of who's who, what they're capable of doing, what positions they play, that type of thing.
I feel like for the casual fan, you hear about him when he gets drafted. Like, you heard about when they drafted Clint Frazier. You heard about when they drafted Zimmer. You heard about when they drafted Will Benson. Brady Aiken had a kind of a hot button story when he got drafted by the Astros. So when the Indians took him, it was controversial. So you hear about these guys and they get drafted, and then, like you said, unless they do something noteworthy, like Francisco Mejia, who did it while he was at Lake County and then between Lake County and Lynchburg, otherwise you wouldn't have heard about him. And then usually when they get to like AA or AAA, or they get invited to big league spring training for the first time and somebody sees them at the end of a game and they do something interesting, for your casual fans, that's probably the first time you hear about them after they've been drafted. So it's a little harder.
Yeah,
they kind of go years not hearing about him. Then you're like, oh, yeah, I remember he got drafted a couple of years ago. And people always wonder, why they're not in the majors yet, because it's not like the NFL. Like, people are already saying, bring up Francisco Mejia, because nobody understands that draft picks and developing players is so much different in baseball than it is basketball and football where you draft them and they're there the first year. You see them in college and you see them on your pro team the next year.
I will say this. I think with so many younger players playing so well now, I think a lot of the development, I think it has to be that high school coaches are better now and more informed now than they were 60 years ago. And even like Little League coaches, I'm a Little League coach, and we were trained by the Diamondbacks coaches. Like they came out and told us, they taught us how that we should teach, the Little Leaguers, which I don't, maybe you do or don't want to take information from the Diamondbacks.
This
But
year
it's
you
still a
can't. The
major
last
league.
3 years.
It's still a major league franchise. Helping the youngest levels out. So I feel like a lot of these guys are more well informed. They're better players when they come up, and we've seen so many young guys like Ramirez and Lindor come up and just immediately succeed. And obviously, other players on other teams, Correa and litany of other players on Houston, especially. New York has had a few guys, Gary Sanchez. Like there's a lot of young guys. Boston's had 4 or 5 in Betts, Benintendi. All those guys came up young. Bogarts. Chris Sale was super young when he came up. You just see it more and more. So the idea of a guy like Mejia, who was signed in 2012, so he's been around for a long time. The idea of him coming up this year is not that crazy to me. Obviously, that's not ideal, but I'm not going to completely say someone's nuts for saying that. If you look at the catchers in AAA, it's Eric Kratz and Adam Moore. Those guys were not signed to be the catchers of the future.
I mean, given their contract situation, I'd be really stunned if they called up Mejia regardless. They're not going to deviate from Perez or Gomes, and Kratz is number 3, even if he's not the guy of the future. It would take something really catastrophic for them to call up Mejia. And are you saying from a standpoint he could handle it?
Yeah, if Mejia was hitting so well that they couldn't deny him, there's an argument there too as well. Although I will say, Jesus Aguilar did that for 3 years, and they still denied him every time. So they do, obviously, they'll stick to their guns, and they're not going to call somebody up just to call them up. So first thing, I guess, you've been to Ducks games and Captains games this year?
Just captains so far. I'm in Akron yet.
Just the captains? Okay. Is there someone you've seen this year, maybe that's not on paper or whatever, that's interesting to you, that stuck out?
I actually saw Brady Aiken's first start, and it was probably his only good start of the year. He was pretty good. He had a rough first inning and then was good the rest of the way through. His curveball looked really good. He wasn't throwing the ball that hard. He's still sitting around 91, 92 at the highest. That's really the only game I've seen so far. As far from a hitting standpoint, I hate to say it, but there's really nobody on that team I look at and looks like a big league hitter for me right now. I know you're high on Gabriel Mejia, but he took a couple bad
obviously,
routes. That's one
obviously
game.
I haven't seen anybody that's currently on the Captains. There's a couple guys I saw last year, but most of these guys are 2 years out from the last time I saw them. I'll say, based on what I've seen, the most interesting names on the Captains from a Major League future standpoint are Ben Krauth, I think, is probably the closest guy to being in the majors. He was a college reliever. He's a left-hander. He throws slow, but he's the best reliever I've ever seen in AZL ball. And I could see Ben Krauth being in the majors in a year or 2.
Yeah, I agree.
There's no one else on the team that's like that has that really, that fast track. Most of the infielders, and this is maybe offensive, around the horn, it looks like Juan de la Cruz, Alexis Pantoja, and Yormer Rodriguez, Miguel Eladio, and then Erlen Cerda. That's a pile of never gonna make it.
I will say Emmanuel Tapia, the very first, it was the home opener for the Captains. Couldn't put anything in play, and I think he threw 2 pickoffs from Aiken into left field. Aiken picked off 2 guys at first, and the guy, instead of running the pickoff or running the rundown play, Tapia threw 2 balls into left field. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, I
Miguel
wouldn't even
Eladio
say Taffy.
has been interesting since he
The,
got there.
there
I have
is
no
a
idea about who he is, but he's hitting 5 straight games, and he's
who Eladio.
yeah.
Awful. I've watched him for 2 years. He's terrible.
Well, he's not hating Lake County so far. I haven't seen him yet,
Okay.
but
I mean, of the guys I named,
he's in line.
Erland Cerda. Sorry, Erland Cerda has the best bat of the guys I named, although his glove isn't great. Pantoja has the best glove, probably. Yormer Rodriguez is an interesting type. And of those guys I said, I didn't say Luke Wakamatsu because he is a major league prospect. But of those guys, Yorma.
He is?
Luke Wakamatsu? Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I only seen him once, and it's hard for me to make a judgment off this, but from things you hear from around there, and I've only seen him once. I think he's less of a prospect than I thought he was going to be, but he's only 20.
I'd also say he's less of a prospect than I thought he was going to be. But he has a really good swing, and I was. Defense is that he was too aggressive when I saw him. He has a really strong arm, and I'd see him make plays like he gets a routine ground ball to short, and there's a runner on third, and rather than just throwing to first and getting the out, it's an AZL game. Who cares who wins? Whatever, or an extended spring game or something like that. He throws the ball to home and throws it over the catcher's head, and now you got a run in and a guy on second, and it's like, why didn't you just get the out? Stop trying to be Superman, just get the out. So I mean, like, there were definitely some issues with this game, but I like him as a whole. He's definitely the best prospect of all the infielders on that entire team. Logan Ice, I have never seen play, but I've heard he's decent.
I did see Logan Ice throw a runner out a couple weeks ago, and he's got a really good arm. I think Logan Ice defensively is probably is a major league prospect. I couldn't tell you offensively. And Legion Shu, I think you talked about him a little bit last year in one of your articles, or we ranked him, and because obviously nobody else saw him last year besides you, or late in the year he came to Lake County, but he's hit the ball well so far.
He was rehabbing last season. He had Tommy John surgery.
Okay.
In 2016, 2015 it would have been, because he was rehabbing most of the summer last year, and he came up. And he's got a strong bat too. I feel like when they signed him, they signed 4 Taiwanese players at the same time, or maybe within 2 years. They signed 4 guys: Xiao Qing Chang, Ping Su Chen, Li Zhenshu, and Yu Cheng Cheng. 2 of them were pitchers, and 1 of them was a catcher. And to me, I saw that as, we really want these pitchers. We need someone who speaks their language to catch them. And to me, that's what it seemed like. It wasn't like, this is a great catcher, we need him. It was, he speaks the same language they do, so let's bring him in so they have someone they can talk to. And they all played on the same AZL team together, all 4 of them. And the 2 pitchers have since moved up. Obviously, Chang, the shortstop, is in Double-A and playing pretty well.
I wouldn't say pretty well. He's had an interesting start, but he's kind of bottomed out because Double-A is hard.
Okay, and like I said, I say pretty well. I'm basing that mostly off of last year, because I haven't seen any games at the upper minor leagues this year.
Legion Chu so far, 11 walks and 11 strikeouts. That's what sticks out to me. But he's 23, so he's a little old. Todd Isaac has been interesting so far, and I mean, if you're really if you're thinking about going to see a captain's game and you want to know the prospects are there, you might as well just watch.
It's all in the out.
It's all pitchers.
I would say it's all in the outfield. Other than, you got Bieber and Aiken pitching.
Bieber, Aiken, Savali have both had great starts.
Hillman.
Juan Hillman hasn't had a great start, but he's a good name to know. And
Letkowitz is a good reliever.
You said Ben Kraut. He's still there for now. He probably will move up sooner rather than later. Micah Miniard, 6'7", so you really can't miss him on day C pitches.
But Minyard is a good control guy, and I hate to say bad things about guys that young, but he's almost like Josh Tomlin.
But he's 6'7". You think he's going to throw harder, and he doesn't. Yeah,
he doesn't.
9 strikeouts and 9 walks, but he's only got 1.59 ERA this year. But hard to miss because he's 6'7".
Yeah, he was the AZL's ace a couple years ago, and I swear I saw him 5 games in a row at one point. Like every day he'd be out there throwing 3 innings, and he's so good at that level because if you throw strikes in the AZL, you're going to get guys out
It's no different in
close.
Lake County. It's no in the Midwest League. It's the same thing. The only difference probably is if you have even the slightest bit of command with the second pitch, you're just going to fool guys because nobody's used to seeing anybody being able to control curveball 5 out of 10 pitches of it.
Yeah, and I
That's what
think
the only
that's why
difference.
like you said, Aiken has struggled, but I watched Aiken pitch here, and he also struggled here, and his curveball was unhittable. But the problem was
It is. It still is.
he wasn't throwing enough strikes to make them swing at the curveball. When he got ahead in the count, they would swing at it. So I think that's the type of pitcher who will succeed at the later levels better as he gets that command than a pitcher who already has his command and is just getting out guys because there are so many. I mean, think about a pitcher who faces the captains. He gets to face a lineup with Juan De La Cruz and Erlen Cerda and Miguel Eladio and Alexis Pantoja.
He's going to look like a top prospect.
Yeah, he's going to have a pretty good game probably. So,
And provided he
in
doesn't walk Gabriel Mejia and allow 2 stolen bases.
yeah, and I mean that's you were saying that the pitchers were what to look at. I think the outfielders are, and
They
I just have
are. Isaacs is good, and Connor Capel is a good name to know. And
I know
obviously,
Capel
Mejia is
didn't
good.
Capel didn't impress me last year. Isaacs didn't impress me the first year, but the second year he was really good. And Mejia is still my favorite guy in the entire system.
I think Isaac is underrated for sure. I think
Isaacs
a lot of
thinks he's
skills there.
underrated.
Well, maybe he should. I don't know. I think he is
No,
because I didn't really. I knew the name before this year, and I got to see him play. And I think I didn't realize what a good prospect he. I mean, I don't know how great of a
well, did you
prospect he
blink?
is, but he is. Huh?
Did you blink?
No, I didn't.
Don't blink.
That's why I was able to see him this time.
Okay. What's kind of fun about that is you've got those two guys in A ball. You've got Andrew Kalika in Advanced A. You've got Greg Allen in Double A,
Yeah.
and then you've got and Luigi Rodriguez also in Double A, and you've got Bradley Zimmer in Triple A. All of those guys are huge stolen base threats. They're all really fast. I would say good defensive outfielders of varying levels. Obviously, Luigi is not great. You said you didn't. I've seen Mejia will take some of the weirdest routes towards balls, but he usually catches it because he's so fast.
He took some very bad routes the opening night. That's what I was going to say. Is even his speed could not make up for some of the bad routes he took. The
But I
game I
think
saw him already.
he's also an A ball.
There is
So
one guy you mentioned though that needs to be cut. You're talking about writing a why are these guys still here list. There's one name you mentioned that I would put on that list.
what, Luigi?
Yes.
Yeah, but people love Yandy Diaz's biceps, right? It's a big thing now on Twitter,
Yes.
making jokes. Luigi Rodriguez could bench press Yandy Diaz.
Luigi Rodriguez got some help, but we already have noticed he got help for that. Like he's already paid the penalty for the help he's gotten for those biceps. So that a reason alone is why I can't believe they haven't cut him already. And not that Luigi's a bad guy. He likes vampire movies and he's really interesting to talk to. But tell you what, nobody he's been given a lot of chances. And is he hurt right now? Is he even on Akron? Is he on the roster?
He's listed on Akron's roster, and I have not seen him in
I've not seen him in a box score yet.
extended spring, so I don't know. Because I initially thought he was going to be an extended spring with the injury, but
He and
last I checked
Levon
the other day.
Washington were like the next big thing in the outfield when they were at Lake County.
Yeah.
They were both all stars a couple of years, and they look like they're going to be. Luigi is on a 7-day DL right now, and Levon Washington's since been cut, and he's in one of the independent leagues right now, and he had a hell of a time on the independent league last year. Luigi Rodriguez probably, I don't know why he's not there. Luigi Rodriguez has been in the Indians organization since 2010. That's just when he started playing.
Yeah.
That was almost 2 regimes ago, if you count managing wise. No, I guess that was Manny Acta, but still.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
I'm just looking through my list real quick. Martin Cervenka's been with the team since 2009, and he's only
Martin
an
Cervenka
advanced
will
A.
continue to be here. Martin, if you want to talk about Martin Cervenka, Tony Mansolino, I think, would make him a coach tomorrow if they were to cut him. He would not let Tony Mansalino would not let the Indians cut Martin Cervenka.
That's good to hear, and I'm sure the coaches in extended spring, Grant Fink and Owen Dew and and Luke Carlin, would all welcome him as a former teammate.
Grant Fink deserves to be there. I don't know. I mean, Owen Dew. It's been a long time since I've seen him. And who was the other one?
Luke Carlin as the
Luke
manager.
Carlin. Yeah, well, Luke Carlin, a little different story. Yeah, but I mean, Grant Fink retired early. Shouldn't have, but he was never going to hit. But yeah, he's
well, that's what
favorite.
Even the best of the best. I mean, you're talking about a 25-man roster in Lake County. If they were all major league quality, right, they'd be up in 4 years essentially. So are the Indians, most of their roster is under control through the next 4 years. So even if the Indians had 25 major league quality players at Lake County, they still wouldn't be able to come up because they're going to have a lot of those guys that are still already on the roster, like Ramirez and essentially in 2020, Gomes will still be there if they wanted him, and Salazar, Bauer, those guys are all signed or at least under team control through 2020. So even if these guys were all incredible, they're still not all going to be on the team. The fact is they're not all incredible. The vast majority of them are never going to make it to the majors. A lot of guys don't make it past A ball. Like, I think that's a big culling ground between A and advanced A. A lot of times, like, at least I'll go back and look through the drafts. I always do a 5-year draft in review and look back 5 years ago and kind of see where that class is. And I see so many guys that get cut out either after Mahoning Valley or after Lake County, and they just don't make that next level up. So even if we talk about, Connor Capella or Todd Isaacs or whatever being great players,
they could be cut in 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, at the level, that doesn't mean anything necessarily. The only guys I'd guarantee as future major leaguers right now are Tristan McKenzie, Bradley Zimmer, and I guess Greg Allen and Francisco Mejia.
Yes, I would agree.
I'd guarantee those four in some way, shape, or form. Those four make it to the majors. There's other guys that are, upper level guys like Tyler Krieger. I mean, obviously all the AAA guys have pretty much been in the majors already.
I would probably bet on Bobby Bradley making the majors. I don't know what his impact is going to be, but I would bet that he's gonna get a major league at bat at some point in his career.
Probably, but then you think about Nelly Rodriguez.
I don't know. I have Bradley over Rodriguez because.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact he hasn't made it to the majors yet.
Oh, because he's been blocked, and he's going to be blocked. Well, not necessarily. He might have a chance next year that Jesus Aguilar never had because Santana could be gone, and they'll still have Edwin, but they won't have anybody else unless they decide to move Brantley or Kipnis.
Had that chance. They didn't have a first baseman, and then they signed Mike Napoli, and then they didn't have a first baseman, and they signed Edwin Rodriguez or Edwin Encarnacion. So, why did they sign? If they thought Nelly was going to be a superstar of the future, and I don't think anyone has ever thought that, not anyone realistic. But if they thought he was going to be the next big thing, then they would not have signed Edwin because they'd be like, "Oh, we already got this. We're set."
Right. They weren't going to
it's kind of like
somebody to block a top prospect. That's why they won't everybody wants an upgrade in center field and make a trade or do something, but they're not going to do that because they know they've got Zimmer and they've got Greg Allen, so they're not going to go and reach for AJ Pollock or any of those guys.
Exactly. And heading into the 2015 season, I remember thinking they didn't have a shortstop because they weren't going to start the season with Lindor, and they knew they weren't starting the season with Lindor. But they also didn't even sign a short-term guy. They just put Ramirez there.
And they still
because they knew they didn't want to waste money on something when they knew Lindor was going to be up in a month or two and that he was going to stick for sure. There are guys who and to me, I listed those guys. It's Zimmer, Allen, Mejia, and McKenzie. Those are the guys I know. I've seen them all play.
Which is why I don't see them making a trade for a catcher now because.
Hold up, I can't hear you, Justin.
1 year.
Hold up, say that again. You're too far away from your mic.
They're not going to make a trade for a catcher anymore because They have Perez locked up long term. They have Gomes locked up long term, and Mejia's probably a year away at worst. So they're not going to go out and do anything at the catcher position now. Last year was perfect because Lucroy would have moved over to play first base this year when Gomes and Perez were healthy this year, and they could have had three catchers, and then Santana and Lucroy at first.
Yeah, I think
It
they're
was
obviously
a short-term fix.
they're much better off now than they were then.
Just slightly, yeah. I mean, considering they still got to keep Allen Mejia and Armstrong
and Chang.
Chang.
And Chang is the least of those guys. He definitely doesn't project as a shortstop. I can't believe they haven't moved him full time to third base yet because they know Lindor's there.
Well,
Just
but there's no
move him.
reason to because they can try to see how long he can stick or what he can do there until he
But he's not
absolutely can't.
he's not that good at shortstop.
No, he's not a future. But I mean, if they want to, what's the harm in keeping him there? Because
Well, that he's not getting any innings somewhere else where maybe he could improve. Like to me, to be a shortstop, you don't only have to know how to play the position, but you have to be physically gifted with the reaction time and the agility, the athleticism to play the position. And
he's
he
got
doesn't
the
have
arm.
that.
The arm's not the problem.
Yeah, so he could play third base. That's the point. I think he'd be a
Yeah,
pretty good third baseman. He played
or
third base.
even second. I think his bat would be better at second base even. But
Yeah, so he
they're
played
not going
third
to put him in
base.
second because Tyler Krieger and Mark Mathias are both second basemen. They're not going anywhere. And I think that those guys are both ahead of him in the totem
Oh yeah,
pole of
definitely,
long prospects.
definitely in the prospect rankings. And Matthias is actually in Arizona right now. He DH'd the other day.
Oh, that's right. He's on the Akron's DL for that separated shoulder from spring.
Yeah, so he's working his way back. I've seen Krieger play a lot more than I've seen Matthias, partly because he was in the World Baseball Classic, and he played really well in the World Baseball Classic against quadruple A talent, let's call it.
I think you were right on Krieger. I think he's one of those other guys that's probably a future major leaguer just because of the bat. I have no idea how he'll handle it. When I saw him at Lake County last year playing second, he was not great. He struggled to read some balls off the bat and the reactions over there. So I don't.
I feel
He
like
was drafted as a shortstop. I don't think he's ever going back. I think he has the same. It's funny. He has the same issue as Kipnis now. He's got the history of a shoulder problem, so he's probably never going back to shortstop.
well, but
And
again, I
so
don't
it's
think
never going to be a strong suit.
the Indians don't need a shortstop. You can always find a utility infielder if you didn't have one, but they also have Eric Gonzalez who can play shortstop enough or need 5 days off over the next 6 years.
But he can't do it as well as Michael Martinez, we know.
Apparently. But what I'm saying, so the Indians don't need a shortstop, so they should not be putting any top prospects at shortstop.
Well, I guess I'm saying that in terms probably of trade value. That's why it's better off that Chang stays at short, and if Krieger could play short, it increases trade value because at this point, almost every minor leaguer not named McKenzie and Zimmer and Allen, I think. Mejia, did I say Mejia? Mejia, those are probably the three or the four that you can't trade. Everybody else, I think, is you have to look at in terms of prospect currency, and I think it would improve. It improves their chances of value if Chang's staying at short and if Krieger could, but obviously, Krieger can't.
I guess I feel like most teams are smart enough now; they're not going to be fooled by something like that.
Staying at position.
It's kind of like what we talked about last year a lot during the season was just calling somebody something does not make them that thing. So if you call Mike Avila a center fielder, that does not make him a center fielder. He still can't play the position. Like just because you said he is doesn't mean he actually can physically do it. So if you call Chang a shortstop, other teams are going to scout him before they trade for him, and they're going to know he's not a shortstop.
Can we tell Francona that about Martinez?
I've told Francona that if he reads Twitter.
Just because you say Martinez is a good utility infielder doesn't mean that he truly is. They're just words. It's like I can make a political joke, but I'm just going to hold back on that.
Mm-hmm. I just before we wrap up, I have to talk about my kids here in Arizona because while most people probably never heard of any of these guys, I find it completely hilarious that they have a guy named Jonaver, spelled Jhon, a guy named John, spelled Jhon, and a guy named John, spelled Jhan.
Is that Jahan?
Jan? I don't know. Is it Jan Rodriguez? I'm guessing it's maybe Jan because or Han
Jan, I don't know.
Rodriguez. Maybe he was named after Han Solo. I don't know. When Johnny Peralta came up, they said it was a mistake on the birth certificate. And now I'm wondering maybe it's actually a thing.
Or his parents grew up watching Peralta and they were like, "Oh, that's cool," and then they
Now
decided to go
everyone's
with it.
doing it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because technically two of them are named John with Jhon. The one was John Avar Gutierrez, who pitched all
And
right the one time I saw him. Uh, the there's a ton of people here. They when they play AZL or extended spring games, they actually play two games at the same time because they have two full. They have essentially the entire AZL roster, the entire Mahoning Valley roster, and a select few guys from the DSL, plus rehabbing guys like Dylan Baker and Grant. Not Grant Fink. He's the
how
coach.
has Dylan Baker looked, by the way? Now that we're on that subject, because I'm still
Not
a really Dylan Baker.
not good.
Not good.
But Grant Hawken looked good last time I saw him pitch. He had two
There's another
perfect
good name
innings.
that should make it to Lake County this year that will just make pitching more interesting there.
Lake County. Jesus, hasn't he already pitched there? I figured he'd be like at
Grant
least
Hawken?
double A.
Grant Hawken, I don't think he's even made it to full season ball ever.
Oh, really? Wow.
I
He's
don't
been
think he's ever
around
made it in
since
Arizona. Well, yeah, Tommy John, and he hasn't been back since.
he's a second round pick in 2014. That's how long he's
Yeah,
been around. Second round
yeah,
picks are supposed to move up quickly. A lot of them don't even go to AZL, and he's
yeah.
whichever. Big names we got. The biggest game that I've enjoyed so far is Ronnie Dominguez, who played the last 2 years in the DSL, and he's fast. He's another center fielder. He is another center fielder who takes really interesting routes to balls, but still gets the outs generally. And he's got a good swing, and I'm hoping something comes out of him too. To me, it can't hurt having all of these guys uh, that have the same uh, form. You figure if you got one guy and he gets hurt, then you lost. You missed that one guy. Or if you have one guy and he doesn't pan out, like let's say they'd put everything on Dorsey's Paulino,
Oh,
it that it didn't pan out. I mean, obviously he's still in the system, but it obviously didn't pan out. But if you have 20 guys like that, which the Indians are close to having in the outfield, they really have a lot of. I think we're doing coming out this week. We'll have our top 10 minor league center fielders for the Indians coming out. There's 14 guys who qualify as center fielders, and most of them have the exact same profile.
I would say at least 3 on my list do. Yeah,
I some of them have like add and subtract power. Obviously, like Luigi Rodriguez has more power, uh, and Gabriel Mejia has less. And like Jose Nelson, he's only played corner outfielder, but I guarantee he could play center. He's got a ton of speed too. Uh, Junior Soto has played mostly center. He's got a lot of speed and a lot of power. Most of these guys are going to burn out long before anyone really hears about them. But
yep.
by having so many options, maybe I'll never talk about Ronnie Dominguez again. I'm going to talk about him a little more because I'm going to write something about him next week. But it may be after the season we never talk about him again. Maybe Oscar Gonzalez, who hit 10 home runs last year, 9 home runs, and led the AZL. Maybe we never talk about him again because he definitely has some major issues. But having him makes the minor league system better, and it gives the minor league system a lot more options coming up to the future.
Well, you just need a lot of outfielders anyway, and there was a period where their outfield depth was just god awful. They did not have any good outfielders, and you saw it on the major league field because after Sizemore got hurt, you go to that period where they had to sign Johnny Damon. They had Shelly Duncan and Austin Kearns and Travis Buck, and Chu was the only
Well, yeah,
outfielder they had that was worth anything.
Yeah, they had a lot of bad drafts in a row, and I'll say like with the with with the current group, like with Chisenhall, Almonte, Brantley, shit on Baseball and Brews last week, they just said something about locking Brantley up long term, and I really don't see that happening. He's a free agent after next season. And Chisenhall's also a free agent after next season. So they're going to need these guys because I don't see them retaining either of those guys necessarily.
I could see them
I mean, maybe
retaining
they could.
Hall.
I don't. If they were going to, why wouldn't they have already done it? They don't usually wait until that late in somebody's career to sign
True.
extensions with them.
Well, I don't know if they ever gave Hall one of those team-friendly deals.
No, he's still in arbitration. Same thing with Brian Shaw. And that makes me think that they're not going to re-sign Brian Shaw, who's a free agent at the end of this season.
Well, considering Brian Shaw is going to throw in his like 600th or 800th or 700th career game this year, I think they've milked everything out of Brian Shaw they can milk out of him. I think that's why they're going to walk away.
Yeah, but I think also with Chisenhall, you've got Almonte still, who isn't an ideal choice, but Zimmer should be up by the end of the season. So you could see even by next year, them starting to push Chisenhall out and replacing him with
Zimmer and then Allen.
With Zimmer,
they still like Naquin enough, I guess.
And Allen.
I mean, Naquin
yeah,
can
so I
essentially
think you could see it.
The next Chisenhall.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a guy who runs around with his shirt open and carries a tray of half-empty tray of water.
The only thing I would say about them keeping Chisenhall is he's really
Justin is very serious.
What? No, your mic cut out, so I didn't hear a thing you said. So I just want to let you.
Oh, okay. I said there's nothing wrong with being a Chisenhall. A guy who walks around with his shirt open and carries a half-empty tray of water.
Yeah, I don't know if Naquin has that level of goofiness.
Check my Twitter from a few days ago. I've got a picture of Henry Pujols on there, who's the third baseman at the extended spring right now, and he's got his jersey is unbuttoned past the letters.
I saw the picture. Yeah.
I'm telling the people listening, he's obviously shaved his chest, and he's not wearing an undershirt. It's just like maybe that's how they do it in the DSL. You think it's hot? They're trying to get those Dominican ladies. It's really humid.
Is that a baseball if you've got it flaunt it kind of thing, or maybe it's a Latin thing? I don't know. I really don't know. I think Luigi Rodriguez did that, but you said Luigi Rodriguez has quite the pectoral muscles, so I guess that's why Luigi Rodriguez did it.
I got close to Henry Pujols, and I'll say he's got the makeup there that he could be Luigi size if he starts getting on some steroids.
Let's hope he doesn't run into Luigi for his sake.
He's got the base. He just needs a little Andro, pump that thing up.
Well, I think he can go find Steve Delabar.
Yeah, that's what I figure. Yeah. Why haven't they cut Steve Delabar yet?
That's a good question. Are you allowed to cut somebody who's suspended for steroids? Are you allowed to cut them? Is there a rule against that?
Yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
Didn't Manny get cut when he was on suspension with Oakland?
Maybe.
I think so. Manny was in AAA rehabbing, coming back from his suspension, and I think he got cut before he came back.
I don't know. It's weird because, who was the outfield for the Captains a couple of years ago? There was an outfield for the Captains a few years ago. It was 1 or 2 years ago, and he was an undrafted free agent. It wasn't really good. He got busted for steroids and then came back, and the day he came off the restricted list from steroids, they cut him. I think he was actually from Cleveland, too, if I remember right. I can't remember the guy's name because he just.
Well, I guess it's an unpaid suspension, right? So they're not getting paid anyway, so it makes no difference whether you keep him on during the suspension or not, except that, when Luigi was coming back from his suspension, he was in Arizona playing games. And when Abraham Almonte was coming back from his suspension, he was in Arizona playing games.
Yeah, because at a certain point, you're allowed to.
Well, you can play in extended spring no matter what.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Almonte was playing down here as soon as the season started, and so was Rodriguez last year.
Are you talking extended or are you talking about AZL games?
Extended spring, because he was back before AZL started. AZL starts in late June.
Right,
and they were both back before.
I don't remember. Either way, I just thought it was weird that The Indians didn't cut that outfielder, and then when he came off the restricted list for steroids, they just cut him at the first day he was back. So it was just, I don't know if there was a
Yeah,
rule against it. It sounds weird.
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they cut Delabar, especially. I mean, like to me, the chances of them needing Chris Narveson, who's pitched well in AAA, but has to be at best third on the depth chart, right? Clevenger's obviously number one. Merritt should be number two.
I would say below third.
You put Morimondo
I would say,
or
well,
Plutko above.
because Narveson's on the 40, I would say it's Clevenger, Merritt, Plutko, and then Morimondo are all ahead of
What
Narveson.
if somebody got hurt in the major leagues?
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean I've just seen him go with Toru Murata and everybody else in the world before they've gone with some prospects at times. So I think Clevenger and Merritt have proved enough in the majors last year that they would bring them up first, but then I think they'd go with Narveson because he's older.
Over Morimondo and Plutko?
Yeah, just because they haven't pitched that much in the major. They pitched a couple innings in relief last year, and neither of them pitched much. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying that Narveson is that far down. Delabar is way further than him.
Yes.
If you need a reliever, you've got Sean Armstrong, you got Kyle Crockett, you got Carlos Frias, you got Percy Gardner, who I think is still hurt.
And Josh Martin.
I don't know much about Josh Martin, but yeah, and Jeff Johnson.
Yeah,
You've got
all ahead of Delabar.
Yeah, all those guys are ahead of him. There's no reason at all to keep him in there.
Yeah. We spent way too long on Steve Delabar.
Yeah, I think that's it. Cut him, get him out. I believe in second chances because there's one guy who keeps tweeting at me, talking shit on Almonte, that wants him cut still.
He's got a 110
like
way it runs created plus so far. Like he's walked more this year than he did all of last year already.
It's for moral issues, and it has nothing to do with physical ability. And I always say the same. Like first thing, in general, I believe that governing should be done. Police work should be done by the police. So if you do something illegal, you shouldn't necessarily get suspended by it. You should get put in jail. Like that. I think it should be separate from baseball. But when you're talking about the steroid stuff, and you're talking about cheating. Still, if you do something illegal and you get put in jail and then you get out, you've been punished. Like you're now allowed to go get a job
time.
and be, you can be a productive member of society again. What Almonte did was way less than most things that would get you put in jail. And you have to forgive a guy and let him. If he does it one more time, I know there's a 3 strikes and you're out policy because of whatever. If he does it one more time, he's out to me.
Oh yeah, it's a full.
But if
season.
he never does it again, so what? He did it once. He made a mistake. He's back.
He served his punishment. I mean, he missed half the season, then he wasn't allowed to play in the playoffs, which, by the way, is one of the dumbest rules. The playoff thing is stupid.
Well, that was because of the Diamondbacks.
Wasn't it the Diamondbacks? Wasn't it because of?
Because they complained about Ryan Braun because the Brewers beat him in the playoffs, and it was because of Ryan Braun.
It was Melky Cabrera playing for the Giants. Oh, the Giants didn't let him play. That's what that was.
No, they didn't let him play, and it was after that they changed the rule. But the rule was because Ryan Braun played against the Diamondbacks, and they got so mad about it.
See, I think that's a horrible.
I think it is stupid because the guy's obviously off of it, or else he would have been suspended a second time. Whatever. This is too much for today. We'll cover more next week. Hopefully the Indians will win a few more games. It is a fairly big series against Houston. Breaking up the Central Division play at least a little bit. You can follow me on Twitter. Oh, what's that?
Tomlin made another good start.
Yeah, if you call 8 hits and 3 runs in 6 innings, good.
Quality start.
Sure.
He's your 5th starter. If your 5th starter goes to 6 innings, goes to 3 runs, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, and if your 6th starter is in AAA and hasn't given up a run all season, he probably shouldn't be in AAA. Anyway, I've been Joe Koblitz at Burning River BB on Twitter. He's been Justin Latta at JL_baseball on the Twitter. Make sure to do all your fun things on iTunes to us if you want to. Push the buttons and things. And make sure to check out burningriverbaseball.com where we have all sorts of fantastic content every single day, including minor league top 10 list on Saturday, and then the recap on Sunday of everything that's happening throughout the week. We'll catch you next time. Go Tribe.